Hello everyone, I'm Heath, and in this video I want to talk about my general philosophy on randomness in RPGs and tabletop games in general, although we've been talking about RPGs quite a lot on the channel recently, and what my general philosophy on that is, because this has come up in the comment section quite a bit. It's like, what are you trying to do here? What is your opinion on randomness? Are you trying to eliminate it? If you are, just go do something else. These kinds of things come up quite a bit, and so I thought, well, I should probably address that directly. And my current game design philosophy is that I think that randomness in the game should generally be minimized. Now, not eliminated. I'm not trying to eliminate it, or I don't think that's necessarily the goal of my current, game design philosophy, not to eliminate it, but generally to minimize the amount of randomness in the game, and that is because I want to reward good play and good decision making by the players as much as possible. Because if there is some type of, optimal way to play the game or to accomplish some kind of task in an RPG, and the player, on behalf of their character or whatever it is they're playing in another tabletop game, thinks through all of those and puts all of those things in order and brings them to bear on the task at hand or the victory condition of the game, then I want that person to be successful or to be victorious. I don't want so much today for that good thinking to be undermined by a random roll which causes them to fail. To me, that is undermining all of the other things you might do as a game designer, that you want the person to think through, do this and then do this, or in this situation you should do this. And if a person is thinking through and executing all of those things, they need to have the positive reward at the end of the game, or during the game, or whatever. So let me give you a couple of examples of that. This was the first game that I did right here, the first board game. This is War of Kings right here. This is a game of civilization building and conquest. It's, you're building a kingdom, so you're doing, constructing fortresses and also building cities and towns and all of that and raising armies, but you're also doing conquest and fighting off barbarian hordes and all of that as well. There are a lot of random elements in that game. There are a lot of things that you won't know as the player, like, what particular territories are going to be generating resources for you from round to round, or whether or not the barbarian hordes will appear, or where they will appear, and then when all that happens, you're just going to have to be responding to all of that during the game. Now, of course, generally speaking, there can be also a lot of fun in that, and there can be. But, as I've been playing War of Kings with people at different conventions and things like that, there have been definitely situations that have come up where I've been watching a player, and that player has been executing a strategy that should, I think, be successful. They're doing well, they're doing what they should do, they're responding to things, blah, 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 blah. And then when it comes time for them to make like one final attack or something like that that could potentially win the game for them, because of a dice roll, they may lose and it all may, go downhill for them, and then the game continues. But as I'm sitting there looking at that, I'm going, that person should have won the game. We should have just ended right there, because that attack should have been successful. This person has been clearly the most successful in executing a strategy. They were going to do this thing that would have won them the game, and then just by chance, it didn't work. And so I do think that kind of undermines their interest in the game, because they did everything right, but yet they still weren't able to actually win the game because of a random element. And so the more random elements that you have in a game, the more often that's going to happen. Now, there are different games with different kinds of play styles. For instance, Hero Quest. Hero Quest is a very random game, but I still am a big fan of Hero Quest. As you can see, I've got a whole series of videos on Hero Quest on this channel. It's been a family favorite game for many, many, many years in my family. So we played it a lot. I enjoy it for what it is. It is a very random game, and in one of the videos where I was talking about ways that I would improve Hero Quest, if it were just given to me, one of the things I would do is try to decrease the randomness, because the dice rolls for the attack and the defense, we're rolling dice rolls for attack and defense, which, by the way, I can kind of get on board with. I like active defense systems. That's what I call that, when you actually roll to defend. There are reasons why active defense systems might not should exist in games, and maybe that's a good topic for a video to come. But, one of my first gaming experiences with Hero Quest, where you roll dice to attack, you also roll dice to defend. So, it has a special place in my heart for that reason, but that does increase the randomness of the game. When I was designing my second game with my brother, this is it. This is Enchantress. We were heavily inspired by Hero Quest, and this is a game of magical combat where you've got different types of wizards in a spell arena who are in combat with one another and casting spells. And we were definitely inspired by the Hero Quest combat system because we enjoyed that a lot, because we played it a lot. So it's an active defense, active attack and active defense system, but we intentionally tried to make sure that it was not as random. We tried to decrease the randomness in that system. So even though you've got both attacking players and defensive players rolling dice, we wanted to modify it so that, we reduce the randomness in the game. And, we reduced it, and I think it works. I'm very proud of Enchantress. But, as I'm reading the comments in some of these videos on RPGs and specifically Dungeons & Dragons that people write, there is definitely some people who will say things like, the randomness is intrinsic to Dungeons & Dragons. It's an important part of the game. The D20, I love it. I love the chaos that it provides. Chaos was a word that somebody used. I love the chaos that it provides in the game. If you don't like it, some people will say, just go play something else. So, that this randomness is a core part of the game. Now, whether or not randomness is something that's a core part of Dungeons & Dragons, and whether or not that could be changed for better or for worse, is not really the concern here in this video. Because there have certainly been things, like as I talked about in other videos, the 2d10 option in Unearthed Arcana, where they talk about how to potentially apply that to your game and the effect that it would have. So there's even a history in Dungeons & Dragons about potentially working with other random number generators. But that doesn't change the fact that there are certain types of players who really, really love the randomness, and that's a really important part of the fun and enjoyment of the game. And that's not wrong. I mean, that's just that particular playstyle, and I'm not here to criticize any particular playstyle. My general preference is to reduce randomness, but there are certainly players out there who absolutely love the randomness, the chaos, as one commenter said, and that's just a huge part of the fun for them. And I know people like that. I was involved in a Rollmaster group for a little while, so we were playing several games of Rollmaster. And one of the reasons that one of the people really loved Rollmaster and loved that game was because of the randomness. And this is an example that he used. It's not an exact quote, but it's pretty close. He was saying that one of the reasons that he loves Rollmaster is because you can be King Arthur drawing Excalibur, about to kill a peasant, and you still need to roll because there's a chance you're going to fumble Excalibur, fall down and stab yourself through the throat, and die right there. And he meant that. I mean, that was an important part of it to him, that nothing was for certain. King Arthur, wielding Excalibur, about to cut down a peasant, could end up, stabbing himself through the throat with Excalibur and killing himself right there. Is that what you want in a game? Well, for that person, absolutely yes. That person loved it, and that was an incredibly important part of the game, and one of the reasons why he loved Rollmaster so much. For me, I would go, no. By the time you are King Arthur, by the time you have the magic sword Excalibur, and you are fighting, an unskilled peasant who's probably terrified that you're bearing down on him, you're going to be able to take out that peasant, and the risk to your own life is probably pretty negligible. And, that's where some other people, that's also a very popular thing to say in the comments, is that, well, then you just shouldn't roll. There should be no roll made. The game master needs to be able to just make the adjudication that if you are King Arthur with Excalibur and there is this terrified peasant in front of you of the enemy army, you can just cut that peasant down, and there's no reason to make a roll at all. And I do, I do understand that. And as I've been going through all these videos and talking with people in the comments, because I think it's been a fantastic dialogue, I've been trying to come up with where do I want to put that randomness. And, it could certainly not be there. Because one of the things that I think I've been trying to get to, and maybe I've communicated this well or not communicated this well, who knows, is that, if you're predominantly depending on the character's skill, then for some things like trivial or very easy tasks or something like that, I want the system to just show you that, obviously your skill and everything going on is going to overwhelm any kind of random element that we've got, and you should just be able to execute that task without any kind of difficulty. But what I've been trying to think of, and who knows whether this is possible or not, but that I do want the system to tell you that and show you when that happens, rather than always making it an arbitrary call of the game master. Now, it can certainly be that. I don't mind it being an arbitrary call of the game master, saying in these certain circumstances, you will fail, in these other circumstances, you will succeed. That's it. I would want the system, if I could, to try to prompt that as well. Another kind of example that's been brought up in the comments is something like a hobbit fighting a dragon, or somebody who is fighting a dragon. And the general idea that seems to be brought forward is the idea that, well, if there's not some type of random element in this, and if you can't just happen to luck out and roll well enough, then kind of what's the point? When the hobbit goes and fights the dragon, the hobbit's just this lowly hobbit, and then you've got this mighty dragon, and if you're more deterministic, then when the hobbit goes up and tries to stab the dragon with a stick or something like that, the dragon's just going to have the hobbit for lunch. And so, if you don't have at least some chance that, well, I'm the hobbit and I've got this stick and I'm headed up to the dragon, you might go, that's not a very good idea. But do you want the player to be able to say, yeah, it's probably not a good idea, but I'm feeling really lucky rolling these dice. And if I roll really well, I might be able to take out this dragon. Do you want that to be a part of the game? Again, there's no right or wrong answer to that. But my inclination would be no. My inclination would be, if you are the lowly hobbit and you go up and poke the dragon with a stick, you're going to die in short order because the dragon is overwhelmingly powerful. The hobbit is, very lowly and not powerful. And so it makes sense that I don't want some kind of system, well, roll the die and if you score a critical hit or, blah, 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 let's not have that. Okay, now this does go back to one of my other game design philosophies, because I did a video on what is an RPG system for, and so if you haven't seen that one might also help you kind of understand my game design philosophy anymore, because originally I came out of a very simulationist background. I love GURPS. I played a lot of GURPS, and of course there's a lot of, what people might call realism, trying to build in kind of physics simulators. Does your attack hit or not? Well then, what's your skill? What's the other person's skill? What kind of metal is your sword made out of? What kind of metal is their armor made out of? Is it good quality sword versus, not so good quality armor or whatever? And then we're going to adjudicate all of this and try to come up with what happens. I'm a fan of that. I agree. I like that. I came out of that kind of tradition. And so for games that run like that, I mean, if I had a really hardcore simulationist kind of gaming group who wanted to meet, I would, definitely play with them. But on the whole, I have started to kind of move away from that style of gaming. Still has a special place in my heart, but my kind of current thinking on it is to move to something else, which is to simulate storytelling. And that was a phrase that my friend Lou Anders used, that he wanted the game system to help him simulate storytelling. And so that's what I think about when we're talking about The Hobbit and the Dragon. Well, or King Arthur and Excalibur as well. If we're talking about some type of storytelling element, is it going to serve the story for King Arthur to accidentally kill himself with Excalibur as he tries to kill this frightened peasant? Probably not. I mean, maybe if that happens and it's a storytelling kind of system, then it would be important to the story that happened. Okay, but it's not just going to happen randomly. We don't want that thing to just happen randomly. Likewise with The Hobbit and the Dragon, that we've got the conflict between the Hobbit and the dragon. If the Hobbit just tries to go toe-to-toe with the dragon, the Hobbit's going to die, the dragon's just going to be overwhelmingly possible. But we do tell stories all the time where we have this weak hero and this powerful villain or monster or whatever, and we have this mismatch in power, and of course we're really rooting for our hero, like maybe the Hobbit and the dragon. We're really rooting for this underpowered hero to be able to take out this, vastly more powerful foe. But I would argue that in most cases in storytelling, that doesn't happen because of randomness. In most cases, I would argue, if it's good storytelling, the defeat of the big powerful foe by the less powerful hero actually occurred because of very deliberate reasons in the story that led you to that point. Now, I've got an example of that because I've been working on this story, The Tale of Clovis and Enorda. It's not out yet, but it will eventually be on the Tales of Rabavania YouTube channel, because that's one of the worlds that I'm developing, and I'll put that material there once it's released. But in that story, I'm kind of telling something very similar. I've got this hero, Clovis, who in the beginning is not all that powerful. He's got to face down this very powerful monster, dragon-like kind of monster, Enorda. He knows that if he goes toe-to-toe with the monster, directly and marches in there, he's going to die. I mean, there's no chance, whatever 5% roll of a 20 or a 100 on a D100 or whatever, that he's just going to accidentally kind of randomly kill her if he goes into her lair and challenges her. And so actually all of the different chapters of the story are him trying to come up with a way to overcome some kind of deficiency that he has when fighting the monster. For instance, the monster can fly, and so he has to spend some time coming up with some way to rectify the problem that he can't fly. Or, the monster can breathe fire, and if the monster breathes fire, he's just going to be burned up. So one of the things that he has to do is come up with some way to make sure that he can endure the fiery breath, and so forth and so on, so that by the time you get to the end of the story, where this hero, Clovis, is going to fight Enorda, okay, if Clovis is going to overcome Enorda, it wasn't by a random chance, it was actually by the very deliberate acquisition of all of these different elements as they manifest in this story as magic items, basically, that are going to allow him to overcome all of that monster's advantages. And when I think about that, I think about applying that to an RPG situation. You've got these heroes, they're mismatched, because the opponent is so much more powerful. Even if they go up against them, I don't want them just randomly be able to defeat the person. Instead, they're going to have to be very deliberate in their choices and what they want to do and how they are going to prepare themselves in order to ultimately be able to take down the big bad guy. And then if they execute all of those steps, then they're going to be in a situation where we might not want to say 100% determined they're going to do it, because like I said, I'm not trying to eliminate randomness, I'm just trying to reduce randomness, but that once they get to that end encounter, if they've done all these other things and prepared themselves properly, we'll say it's highly probable that they're going to be successful in their task. And so that to me is kind of the idea of simulating storytelling that Lou Anders talked about. Now, before I leave the subject entirely, I do think from a game perspective, it is necessary to distinguish between randomness and just unknown elements of the game, because those things are related, but they are a bit different. Because in certain games, I think an important element of certain games, and one that I like, is that you're going to have to make decisions based on incomplete information. You've got only a part of the information you need in order to make the call, but you're going to have to make the call anyway, because that's part of the game. Is what you do good or bad, or is it going to win, or is it going to be successful, or is it going to fail, or whatever? Not necessarily because of something random, but because there was information that you didn't have. And that information may be held by another player. Now, of course, randomness can introduce this element, because, if you're, in the most straightforward example, if you're going to make an attack, but you do have to roll a d20, and so there's some element of randomness in here, you are missing some information. You're missing some information because you don't know what that d20 is about to roll, but you're going to commit to that action anyway. That's an example of randomness where nobody knows what the result of that d20 was going to be before it's rolled. That's a bit different from, dividing up all the knowledge in the game and giving it parts of it to different players, and then asking the person to choose courses of action because of incomplete information. It's incomplete information in both cases, but one of them with the die, it's incomplete information because nobody can possibly know it because you're going to generate it randomly. And in other kinds of games, like social deduction games, the game in that sense is still deterministic. Once the cards are out there and whatever, the situation from a God's eye perspective, except for no player has that perspective, because every player is missing some part of the information, is just going to have to make a call. So that's not exactly randomness, but it is making decisions with incomplete information. And I actually think that's a very important component in different kinds of games. And I really haven't thought about this in any particular degree of thoroughness, but right now an RPG often has the random element that is unknown to everyone because it's just a dice roll. There are other possible ways I think you could probably do it, where you are asking the players to make decisions and undertake tasks with imperfect information, but that information may be known to other people, and you're just asking them to make a call based on what they know or what they don't know at any given time when they have to make that call. So once again, thank you so much for being with me. What do you think about all this? Do you like it? Not like it? Please let me know down in the comments. I love to read them. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. It really helps a lot. But also, please check out The Cultists, the web series on this channel about modern-day D&D playing Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on the channel now. But also, please check out my YouTube channel. I have over 150 videos on tabletop games and the fantasy genre. If you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy many of them as well. I look forward to seeing you for them and many more videos to come. Later.